Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Santa Clarita In-Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host,
Dr. Jean Dorio.
On your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And our guests this morning are Dr. Mawa Kalani, a palliative care doctor, and her guest, Leah Phillips, registered nurse, who is also working in the palliative care business. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot to talk about today.
Oh,
Wow.
yes, lots to talk about. But first of all, what is palliative care?
Palliative care is a medical specialty that really focuses on whole person care. So one of the things that palliative care focuses on is patients who have serious illnesses. A lot of times it's chronic illness, or other times it could be serious, life-threatening illnesses. And the focus is not just on the physical symptoms of the patient and coordinating their care, but also about providing them spiritual care, emotional care, and psychosocial care. And so it's not just delivered by a physician, but it's delivered by a whole team. So it's a physician, nurse, social worker, chaplain, and it's interdisciplinary.
I see, and that's where you come in, Leah.
Yes.
I see. And what do you do as far as working with
It is a
patients?
collaborative team approach, and so we work closely day by day, patient by patient, and really coordinate with case management for discharge planning, really getting to know who our patients are, and really advocating for them.
But you guys are in a hospital environment, but palliative care extends beyond the hospital, and it really should start in the home with the family and discussion about what it is and the personal wishes of family members and the direction they want to go in life, and to what degree and extent they want technology to help them out.
Absolutely. And now we're recognizing more and more that there's a very significant role where advanced care planning, there's a void right now.
Big void.
But we need to start focusing more on advanced care planning. Developing advanced directives is one way of doing it. Just simply having conversations is a really pure and simple way of approaching it.
Because the worst part is, in a hospital setting, people are coming into the emergency room. They're really sick. And some of them, and I think most of them, will say, save my life.
Right.
You know, I want things to be done. But if you're in a coma, you can't say, save my life. And the rules, the laws in the state of California say that we as doctors, as a hospital, have to save your life. So we are going to do that to the greatest extent. But there are some of our patients that are maybe older, not necessarily, but they just have a philosophy about life that says, I want a certain degree of help, but at some point, I don't want that help. If that's the way fate is, God is, wherever your thought process is coming from, then you want those ideals to be set forward in a plan. But if you haven't talked about it beforehand, well, we don't know for sure that your wishes are going to be carried out.
That is absolutely correct. And it does make a big difference when a conversation has occurred for us as the providers in the inpatient setting to assist and help the families navigate the medical treatments that are available.
Yeah.
Well, now, do you, Dr. Kalani and Leah, do you go into the home also, or are you just in the hospital setting?
We're both in the hospital setting. We do have other providers that are more home-based or community-based that we refer to. This is within our Providence program. And it has been helpful to provide that extra support to our patients. And I know Dr. Dorio really does a pretty amazing job with his patients in the home setting as well.
Yeah, as I do house calls, I think one of the major criteria of giving good care is to be able to talk to the patients and families and caregivers and everybody surrounding them. What direction do you want to go? And you can put out your ideas of your thoughts of where life wants to be in 5 years or 10 years, but legally we have to also, in a hospital setting, know that direction. We need to know there's paperwork to be filled out, things to be signed to make sure that your wishes are carried out. And, the first place to go is, when doing my house calls, and it just doesn't have to be a house call.
Right.
It can be an office call, and it can be a lawyer's office even as well. But, if you're not thinking about it, if the conversation hasn't started, if this discussion is not taking place, then it could be when you're laying on your back in an emergency room, and that's not good enough. And that's not where we want life to take us, because I think in this country we have learned that we make decisions. Personal decisions. We have the right to do that. And we want to hold on to that ideal so that we can put that forth in our lives as well. So that conversation starts early for me. And I would say, 80% of my patients who enter the hospital, the discussion has already been made. I might not know everybody, every discussion. And, sometimes patients will hem and haw in a house call setting. But when they get into a hospital setting, there's no hemming and hawing. I need to know where they want their life taken and what I can do to facilitate that.
Well, Jean, your patients, I think, mostly are seniors. And with your making house calls gives you a better idea of surroundings, the way they're living their lives, areas that might be dangerous, and you get an overall picture of their life at that time. Which I think when I was growing up in England, we didn't go to offices.
Right.
The doctors came to the home. And so much of it still goes on over there. Doctors make house calls. You wouldn't even think of stropping off to a doctor's office. I mean, it wasn't done.
Yeah.
And it's out there. I think there's a comeback to a certain degree. There have been articles written in the Los Angeles Times, and even most recently there was a physician who was doing house calls. And it's admirable that that doctors do get out there and do it. But it doesn't just have to be that house call setting. It just can be wherever you want it to be. But and we're really talking to the caregivers right now, and some of our seniors listeners, I think, have here, at least in Santa Clarita, have made decisions already. But if it hasn't happened, the caregivers are playing an integral role in helping with those decisions. And we're talking to them right now to say, look things up on Google and the computer, and talk with your loved one to make sure where they're going to. There are certain things in life that you start seeing people do, and they forget things, or they fall, or they end up in the hospital. These are clues that okay, something is happening, and you really want to be prepared, because you never know, going from that first step, that second step may be a huge step. Absolutely. So and a lot of times it's smaller steps, but still we want to know, and that discussion taking place will aid us in the long run, and you, the caregiver and the patient, for these decisions down the line. So it's not a surprise. So you're not sitting with your head on a pillow in a hospital bed and saying, what do I do next, if you haven't thought about it. Right.
Yeah. Well, Leah, what prompted you as a registered nurse to go into palliative care?
So actually, my background, I do have a medical surgical background, home health, hospice, and ER background. So my pendulum is kind of from
Swings from one side to the other.
Exactly. So actually, I've been in this position from the ER the last 6 years. And I am all about whole person care and really meeting people where they're at. I agree with you, Dr. Dorio, that the conversation is so much easier to have when you know the patient in the office setting, when they're not so frightened. When these patients come in, they're so vulnerable and they're feeling so uneasy about where they're at. They're scared. They're being consulted by different physicians looking at different parts of their body. And so when we come in, we're not looking just strictly at the lungs or strictly at the kidneys or, what have you. We're looking at really who they are. And a lot of our job and a lot of our work is about relationship building, because these patients are chronic. They're coming in and out of the hospital often. And, when I think that they see our team, they feel relieved that we're there to advocate for them, to really kind of walk them through all the treatments that are going on, the interventions.
And you're actually taking care of them.
Yes. Well,
you really
working
are
with the team as a whole.
Yes,
but yes,
you're
really
taking care of them, and that's aside from their being at home with family members or caregivers, which is a whole different setting. And that fear of going into the hospital, leaving that home setting with the people they're so closely aligned with, and then having to, all of a sudden, I'm in this cold hospital bed and this cold big room. And so you're there as a team to kind of comfort them.
And think about
and
this.
The family as well,
Yes.
because the family's part
Yes,
of the unit, and they're often frightened. And so we really do a lot of family meeting, really just to get them up to speed from day to day as things change.
So the interesting, the changes that have taken place now in healthcare in this country, when you're admitted to a hospital, the old general practitioner is not there typically. Now it's a hospitalist. And that hospitalist is going to give you the technologic detail and the medical lingos that you might not understand at all. And so you're now in a predicament. This person who you've trusted is not taking care of me. You don't know who this person is, and they're going to come in and start asking you questions about where you want to go and how you want to live life, and do you want to have a code status and things like that. They're afraid of that. This is what they're facing nowadays by seeing a doctor in this position that, is supposed to be someone who knows you and will care for you and lead you in the right direction. They're not there anymore. Therefore, we need people behind them who won't speak the legalese or the medical terminology. We need people behind them, like you guys, to help out and comfort them and make sure they start to understand that we're there for them, to make sure that the care that is being rendered is exactly what they want.
Yeah, we really do serve as patient advocates in a lot of ways, but also coordinators to help assist with the communication between patients and families and other physicians or other providers, and also amongst all the consultants to kind of coordinate what's best for the patient and figure out how we can match the treatment to the patient, rather match the treatment to the illness or the disease. So you really are seeing more tailored, personalized medical care when palliative care is put into place. So it's very rewarding, and that coordination of care doesn't just happen within the inpatient setting. It helps to transition the patients out of the hospital as well.
Right. Well, how did you become involved, Dr. Kalani, with palliative care?
I think one of the things that drew me to palliative care is I liked spending time with my patients. I was a hospitalist. I was one of those doctors that would receive, several new patients a day, and saw lots of different diseases, lots of ailments, lots of patients came and went. But I think it was the thing that really drew me was the relationship building, the time that I could spend with our patients, and the way that we really take a different focus to patient care through palliative care, and focusing on quality of life, how we can actually make them feel better, not just provide them treatments. So it really goes back to basics, and some of it is from my upbringing, in wanting to provide good quality of life to those that are around me.
How did the word palliative come about?
It's an old word, and it also unfortunately has a bad rep in a way, because palliative is always considered to be a more of a negative term when it comes to medical terminologies, because it's so associated with hospice. So anytime that palliative came about, everyone just assumed it was hospice care, which is not the case.
End of life care.
Or end of life care.
Yes.
But truly, palliative from the Latin means to cloak or to care. And it has, exactly. She's kind of just doing this hand motion of encompassing.
That's right.
And
that describes it.
Yes, and it's been a noted word for many centuries, and palliative care really led into the hospice movement. And then the hospice movement brought us palliative care, because there are patients who are living for many years beyond the hospice time frame, which is less than 6 months.
Yes.
And the people found that these patients were living long. They were living longer than expected with their ailments, with their serious illness, and they weren't just ready to be on hospice care.
And that brings forward the confusion that our listeners are now going, okay, hospice versus palliative, and you're bringing that out, but I have tried to describe in my writing how palliative care is, as you get older, your options of what we can do for you start to diminish. When you're 20 years old and you have a problem, we got 50 things we can do for you. But when you're now 70 years old, you might have 20 things that we can do for you. When you're 90 years old, we might have 10 things. And when you're 95, there could be 2 things. So the options of treatment are just becoming less. And then as you glide into that and head toward end of life to me is that 6-month time period that's set out there, kind of artificially, but it's out there. But it's just a time where we're not going to, that there's not a lot that we can do for you medically. And if we do something, it could mean extra pain, extra suffering, and we're trying to balance in life, not, making sure that doesn't happen to our patients as well. So we're trying to bring that forward and say, okay, we're getting toward the end, and, when we don't have many options or no options, then that's where you go to hospice or end-of-life care. I mean, I think that's kind of an explanation for our listeners that I've tried to put out there when I write as well, so that people understand that, because it becomes a Medicare definition. It becomes a government definition, and people are going, well, how do I fit in 6 months or 2 years or this and that?
Exactly.
They're not getting it. So, I try to put it out there in a little bit more basic language so people understand it more. And as I present it to my patients and their families, they go, okay, now I kind of understand, the transition that I'm in and the number of options that are less now that I can have when I'm older. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense, and we need to take a break, so let's continue this very interesting conversation when we come back. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.